Good morning, everybody. Today is Saturday, April the 30th, and welcome to a brand new edition of the Kingdom Driven CEO. So I spent the last couple of days in Kansas City, Missouri at a really cool conference with a group called Unconventional Business Network. It was founded by a gentleman named Rick Box. Kimberly Wright was in charge of the program. Michael Willich is in charge of their network. They are really fantastic. And they put together a summit where they brought in Christian business leaders from all over the country. And I was really honored to serve as their MC and a speaker for their event. If you're in that area, if you're in the Kansas City area, I really encourage you to look them up, Unconventional Business Network. But while I was there, I got to meet a gentleman by the name of Jordan Raynor. Jordan was the keynote speaker Thursday evening, and he covered the topic that I want to share with you today. So I'm going to give him full credit for this, but it was so impactful for me that I wanted to share it out with my audience as well. And it is called Redeeming Your Time, and it's 7 strategies that Jesus Christ used to manage his time. It's really very cool. So let's start out with these 2 words. Well, let's say 3 words because we won't use the contraction. I am swamped. I am swamped. I think we have all probably felt that way at some point in our life. You may feel that way now. And I want you to note that this word swamped actually came up in the Bible in Luke 8:22 through 24. One day Jesus said to his disciples, let's go over to the other side of the lake. So they got into a boat and set out. As they sailed, he fell asleep. A squall came down on the lake so that the boat was being swamped and they were in great danger. The disciples went and woke him saying, Master, we're going to drown. He got up and rebuked the wind and the raging waters. The storm subsided and all was calm. Where is your faith? He asked the disciples. In fear and amazement, they asked one another, who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him. What we're going to talk about today is the fact that the same solution that applied to the disciples when they were in that boat that was being swamped is the same in our life when it is being swamped, and that is we need to look to Jesus. So let's talk about how we can find peace in our lives, how we can manage our time well, and then we're going to close with why this is so important. Now, first of all, before we jump into Jesus, I want us to look at how God managed his time, okay? God obviously created the heavens and the earth in basically a week. He did 2 things I think that were very important. One, he focused on one thing at a time. If you noticed, each day he kind of had a focus, something he would create during that day in that early week. And then on the 7th day, he took the Sabbath day to rest. Now, you and I are busy. We have a lot of stuff going on, but I guarantee you we are not creating the earth, the universe, the stars, the animals, the people, the water, all of those types of things. We're not doing that. We're not that busy. So if God can take the Sabbath to rest, so can you. And we're going to talk about that here in just a moment. But he focused on one thing at a time, and he always took time to rest. Now, he also gave us 33 years of watching Jesus so we could learn how Jesus managed his time. And we're going to see this all throughout the Bible. And there are really kind of 4 overarching things that he really did. One is he took the time to prepare first before he jumped into his efforts and his ministry in particular. Number 2, he spent a lot of time in solitude praying so that the Lord was guiding his steps. 3, he minimized distractions. He was very focused on his goal. I think he knew that he only had a certain amount of time, 33 years here on this earth. And so I think he knew he had to stay really focused. And then finally, he was super busy, no doubt about it, but he was not hurried. He took time for what was important and wasn't in a rush while he was very, very busy. So let's start with these 7 principles, and I'm going to cover them pretty quickly today. Number 1, Jesus prioritized his time with God. We mentioned this earlier, but in Mark 1, verses 32 through 35, it talks about how Jesus had been out late the night before healing people. Said he drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. He stayed out super late doing that, but then very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. So he made it a priority. He got up early and prayed, and he always did this. He started his day off by getting his direction from the Father. Number 2, let your yes be yes. If you look at the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is talking about a lot of things, okay? He brings the Beatitudes, he talks about salt and light, fulfillment of the law, adultery, murder, forgiveness, divorce. And then in Matthew 5:33, he talks about making your yes be yes. He says, again, you've heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. But I tell you, do not swear on oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Do not swear by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. So here is the message, the lesson here, and that is we have to keep our commitments. When we say we're going to do something, we've got to do it. When we forget about commitments that we have made, that's no excuse. That loses credibility, and it really, really hurts our witness. So we have to have a way to track all of the commitments that we make and make sure that we keep them. If you can't keep them, do not make the commitment. So we encourage you to write down and keep a list of all commitments that you've made. At our bank, we have what are called promise cards. And every time we make a commitment to someone, we write them down on those cards, and we don't go home until we have completed what we said that we would do. So if we don't write these down, by the way, they'll kind of sit there on our brain and will be it will cause a great deal of stress, subconscious stress to you. So it's important to keep them all in a list. Number 3, we need to dissent from the kingdom of noise. We are in a time of unprecedented noise right now, and it's hard to think, it's hard to be creative, it's hard to hear God's voice when we're always on our phone or checking social media or, watching some type of other media. Jesus was great about getting away from the noise. In fact, in Mark 1, 9 through 13, he had just been baptized. God had just said, this is my son with whom I am well pleased. And if there was ever a time that he should have had a press conference and basically started talking to the world, it was then. But it says at once the Spirit sent him into the wilderness, and he was in the wilderness 40 days being tempted by Satan. He was with the wild animals, and angels attended him. So he got away to prepare for his time on earth and his ministry. So one tip here that Jordan shared was just to stop reading the news, period. That our friends will tell us, they'll curate it for us. They'll tell you what is interesting to you. You'll hear about things that are important. You don't have to spend all your time scrolling and watching the news. Number 4, prioritize our yeses. And this can also mean just say no. Jesus said no a lot. Here's one example. In Mark 1:36, Simon and his companions went to look for him, and when they found him, they exclaimed, "Everyone is looking for you." Jesus replied, "Let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages so I can preach there also. That is why I have come." So this is Jesus for, no, I don't care if all the people are looking for me. It's my time to keep moving on. And he stayed super, super focused. One of the ideas for prioritizing and just saying no is to set bigger goals. If we have large goals, they focus us around those, and we tend to be able to say no a whole lot easier. Jesus had the biggest goal ever in the history of the planet, and it kept him super focused. Number 5, accept the fact that we can only be in one place at one time. Jesus was also very, very good at this. He was super focused. In fact, you might look at it and think it was a little bit rude. If you look in Mark 3, it says he ignored his family. Then Jesus' mother and brothers arrived. Standing outside, they sent someone in to call him. A crowd was sitting around him, and they told him, "Your mother and brothers are outside looking for you." "Who are my mother and my brothers?" he asked. Then he looked at those seated in a circle around him and said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother." He was just so focused on his mission of teaching and sharing the good news that he would never get distracted. One of the things we tend to do is we check our messages all the time, and a strategy here is to only check messages, texts, emails, voicemails 3 times a day. If you think about it, we check these things all day long, and that would basically be just like letting the mailman ring our bell, and come into our house or our office 150 times that day. That's how distracting it is, and we need to really stay more focused on what we are doing. Number 6 is productive rest. Jordan shared that in 1849, there was this immigrant's guide to California, and it showed that those who were in the gold rush, who rested most, got there 20 days faster than those who did not rest. And this is really interesting. Mark 2:27 tells us that the Sabbath was made for man. Jesus said, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. And so Jordan talked about how the Sabbath really changed his life and gave him much needed rest and focus. And it would do the same for us. If God can do his work in 6 days, so can we. We should be able to take the Sabbath and take a day off. And then finally, eliminate all hurry. There is a really great book I've started called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And it talks about how there is a big difference between being busy and being hurried. In Mark 3:21, Jesus, they basically entered this house, and he's mobbed again by the crowd. He can't even eat, and his family literally said, "Oh my goodness, he is out of his mind." That is how busy he was. He was out of his mind busy, but he always focused on every person he talked to. Hurried is when we get mad because we chose the wrong lane at the stoplight or the grocery store. We have to have some margin where when God brings us an opportunity, it doesn't feel like an interruption to us. And then finally, let me just share, why should we care about this? And it's because in Ephesians 5:15 and 16, it says, "Therefore be careful how you walk, not as unwise men, but as wise, making the most of your time because the days are evil." Paul basically said this because there are so many things that can derail us during a day. Temptations, distractions, all of those types of things. And he knows, and Jesus knew, that we're only here but a wisp of air. And so we need to make our time here count. What is really important during our time here, and it is impacting the lives of others. We had another speaker who talked about being very, very wealthy, but he basically had a nervous breakdown. He was pursuing money so heavily, and he was so busy that he could not function. And so he started a new company called Textron out of Houston. The gentleman's name is Terry Looper. And he basically talked about how his new rule after he prayed to God was nobody would work over 40 hours a week. They wouldn't have any sales quotas. And the company has grown up to be the largest privately held company in Houston, Texas, with over $6 billion of worth. So what we know is that the power comes from God. And if we will just do like Jesus and take the time and listen to Him and be guided by Him,